Today we're diving deep into personality theory and looking at how the trait openness to experience influences not only our personality, but how we perceive and understand the world around us. Welcome back. My name's Nina, and here at this channel we talk all about our emotional well-being, understanding our own psychology, and living our best life possible. So if you aren't already a subscriber, please take a moment and become one. We definitely want you to stay connected. So maybe somewhere along the line you have taken some form of a personality test, or maybe you are just a naturally self-aware person. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps you have not given a lot of thought about what makes up personality or how personality is even formed. Either way, I hope today's video is not only insightful, but it also piques your curiosity about your own personality assessment. So firstly, if you ever took a psychology class in high school or college, you were probably introduced to some of the major theories about personality and likely the major personality theorists. Some of the many different approaches to understanding personality include psychodynamic, attachment, psychosocial, behavioral, cognitive, social learning, and what we will be talking about today, which is trait theory. It is important to remember, however, that personality theory is just that. It is a theory, so there are still conflicting ideas about how personality is actually formed and how that process actually takes place. Most psychologists do agree, however, that there are both genetic and environmental components at play, although there is still conflict about what degree nature versus nurture really holds stronger influence. And while there are certainly benefits to studying all theories of personalities, I tend to gravitate towards trait theory, and more specifically, the 5-factor model. I like this because not only has it been proven to be reliable and valid, but it is extremely easy to work with and to make assessments with. The 5-factor model of personality looks at 5 main personality traits, which are openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Today we will be specifically looking at that first factor, which is openness to experience. Now this personality trait, just like all of the others, are measured on a spectrum from low to high. And you will find that the more extreme that you measure within this spectrum, the more that this particular personality trait will influence your personality. I think it's important to study personality because it explains so much, not only about our own selves, but also about other people. A lot of times we just can't wrap our head around why people are how they are, why they have the behaviors that they do, or why they make certain decisions. But when we can understand how strongly personality influences all these factors, we can learn to become a lot more sympathetic. It can also help us learn to be a lot more patient with our own selves when we can understand the motivation behind our own behavior. Understanding personality can also help us understand our strengths and our weaknesses, make sense of our social interactions, help us decide on a career or a relationship, and help us get to know ourselves on a whole different level. The 5-factor model of personality can also help us gain insight into our behavioral patterns, our thoughts, and our tendencies. So let's go ahead and talk about the trait that we are focusing on today, which is openness to experience. Now, maybe you have heard about this one a little bit less than other traits such as extroversion or neuroticism, but openness to experience is a very important trait, and it's also a very interesting trait. People who score high in this trait literally view the world differently than people who score low on this trait. So depending on your score, you could be considered to be open to experience or closed to experience, and of course somewhere in between. But before we go any further, please know that there is no best answer. It's not better to be one way than another way. It's just the way that we happen to be, and it is really helpful to know how we are because, again, it helps us to understand how we function. So what then does it actually mean to be open to experience? We will go ahead and define that, and then we are going to look at these 6 facets within the trait itself. We can define this trait as being associated with curiosity, creativity, and being receptive to change or adventure. People who are high in this trait enjoy trying new things, like to seek out fresh perspectives and ideas, and tend to have warm and loving relationships. This trait is associated with a higher level of overall happiness and well-being. And like I said earlier, the more extreme you score on this, either low to high, the more it's going to affect your personality. So for example, in this particular personality trait, I scored nearly 100%. So clearly, this is a strong influence on my own personality. But the same could be true for someone that scored very low in this factor. So if you are, again, more towards the middle, you're going to find that it affects your personality a lot less. So let's look at the 6 facets within this trait. The dimensions of openness to experience include, number 1, imagination and fantasy. So scoring high in this trait would indicate a creative imagination. Number 2, emotional awareness. This indicates a tendency to both express and understand personal emotions. Number 3, aesthetic sensitivity. This facet describes an appreciation for things that are beautiful in the world and often an appreciation also of the arts. Number 4, intellectual curiosity. This means that someone high in this trait loves to consider new ideas or perspectives. Number 5, adventurousness. This indicates a preference for novelty or for experiencing new places or activities. And number 6, liberalism. This denotes a tendency to question traditional values. So when we score high in this trait, we can expect to have a wide range of interests, be a philosophical thinker, seek intellectual stimulation, and enjoy abstract concepts. We would tend to dislike having a routine, and we might be impulsive. We are inclined to seek deeper levels of understanding and be imaginative. We might enjoy things that are unconventional or unique, and we would likely love to explore new things. And when we score lower in these facets, we might find that we are uncomfortable with change. We have difficulty expressing or having an awareness of our feelings, that we are not that aesthetically sensitive, that we prefer things that are familiar, or that we like to have a set routine, that we prefer the security and stability of rules or tradition, and that we dislike abstract ideas. We might like to play it safe, have a lower tolerance for different lifestyles or worldviews, and prefer to stick with more mainstream choices. So we can see that whether we are close to experience or extremely open, it's going to affect our lives dramatically. So to kind of sum it up, this trait really determines if we are more a practical or conventional type of person, or more an imaginative and adventurous type of person. And again, remember, there is not a better way to be. It's more about understanding, again, who we really are. Interestingly enough, however, whatever personality trait we tend to hold is usually what we find more desirable or considered to be either good or bad. Now, that's not always the case, but a lot of times we feel that however we are is the better way to be, which is of course not the case. It is just our preference. So I also want to quickly answer 2 questions that I get all the time. And the first one is it possible to change my personality traits if I do not like them? And the answer is yes, although most psychologists would agree that it is very challenging to do so and takes a lot of mental strength to be able to do it, because we need to not only change our thought patterns, but we need to be able to change our behavior. However, I can attest to the fact that it is possible, because I personally changed my own score in neuroticism from fairly high to pretty low, and I did that by using cognitive behavioral therapy and just being extremely aware of my different thought patterns and learning to change them. I also did that by changing a lot of my own behavior. So yes, it's possible. It's not easy, but it can be done. And the second question is, how can I get my own personality assessed through the 5-factor model? And this is very simple. You can do it online for free. So you can just simply Google 5-factor model of personality test, and probably several different tests will come up. And I actually recommend doing it a couple times through a couple different websites, because a lot of times it's just the wording of a question that may trip us up a little bit, that may influence how we answer. So we want to also make sure that we are answering honestly and that we are not trying to make an answer really be in alignment with how we would prefer to be. We want to know how we actually are. So once you get your assessment, I am definitely interested to hear where you fall within the trait of openness to experience. I found in my own life that people that I love have both very, very high scores in openness to experience and other people that score very, very low in this factor. And I certainly enjoy both types of people. So I'm very interested to know where exactly you fall within that spectrum. So I truly hope you found today's video both interesting and helpful. And if you did, please like it, share it with someone else who may find this interesting. And as always, I thank you so much for spending time with me today. Have an absolutely amazing day.